On August 17th, a unit of Ukrainian special forces entered a village on the border between Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk. These images are from the operation itself, published by the Ukrainian command. You can see the special forces advancing through the area and driving the Russians out of their positions. 30 Russians surrendered and were taken prisoner. Those who kept shooting were eliminated right there. And when it was over, the Ukrainians raised the flag and did something I didn't expect to see in a military report, a ritual. They call this ritual the expulsion of the Vipers. It's an old tradition of theirs to drive evil out of the house. The Ukrainian command explained this, saying they used the ritual to cleanse the village of the Russians, whom they called real Vipers. But this operation didn't start that day. It started on January 29th and went on for 6.5 months, practically in silence. There was no announcement, press conference, or celebration. Then, on August 12th, the Ukrainian army published the report. 26. 6 villages retaken and 745 square kilometers taken back. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what happened there and why Russia couldn't stop it. Let's go to the map. It was published by the French analyst named Clément Molin. And it's because of him that the public found out how big this thing was. In red is the Russian territory. Blue is the Ukrainian side. And that green strip in the middle, crossed by the yellow arrows, is what Ukraine has taken back since January. The dotted red line is where the front used to be. And look at the scale down here, 5 kilometers. This is a corridor of about 60 kilometers of open fields and small villages. When analyzing, Molin points out something that almost nobody covering this war talks about. A video of a soldier raising a flag doesn't prove any control at all, because moving around is not the same as controlling. And then came a confirmation that I didn't expect to find. In the statement from August 12th, the Ukrainian command released a detail that almost no one mentioned. Some of the flags that appear in their videos were placed on purpose, far from the actual positions of the troops. On purpose, so they wouldn't reveal where the soldiers actually are. The most curious thing is that Russia, when it raises flags, actually does it to stage it for propaganda. Ukraine, on the other hand, hides its flags because the position on the ground matters more than the footage. And if you want to understand the difference between the two armies at this point in the war, that's it. And then there's the most macabre detail of this whole story. When the line moved, there were Russian troops who got trapped north of 2 small rivers. They didn't retreat and didn't show up anywhere afterward. Molin found out what happened to those men by counting airstrikes. There were about 100 in that area, and they weren't Ukrainians. They were Russians. Russia bombed its own territory with its own soldiers inside, and it did that 100 times. That's what proves that it had already lost that piece of land. When the army starts bombing the place where its own men were, it's because they're not there anymore, or they're not alive anymore. 20 out of 26 villages were taken by Ukraine's airborne troops. And their commander, General Ole Apostol, summed up what worked in one sentence. They kept the initiative and imposed their own pace of battle on the enemy. And this sector was not chosen by chance. It was there that the Russians advanced the most in 2025. That's where the city that became their supply center is located. Food, ammunition, and fuel all come from there. Now, take a look at this little yellow box. It's a village 14 kilometers from that supply center, and it's still red. 14 kilometers is artillery range. Whoever holds that village puts the Russian supply route under direct fire. That's where they're heading. That brings up the question that matters. How did Ukraine, which spent 2025 taking a beating in this sector, turn things around in 2026? Before I show you, if you're enjoying this analysis, subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot and only takes a second. The weapon is called FP1. It's a long-range attack drone manufactured by a Ukrainian company called Firepoint. It costs around $55,000. It can fly up to 1,600 kilometers. It carries a warhead of up to 120 kilograms. And the fuselage uses radar-absorbing material. And the manufacturer claims to produce more than 200 per Dalton, with almost all components made within the company itself. All of this without depending on anyone. And then comes that brutal math. $55,000. That's the price of a car. The refinery that this drone takes down costs billions and takes years to build. Every time one gets through, Ukraine trades a car for a factory. In 2022, when the invasion began, Ukraine had about 10 drone manufacturers in the whole country. Today, there are more than 450. They turned a country without a war industry into something that Russia can no longer stop. You know those yellow arrows on the map? Each one of them was opened like this. It wasn't by a tank, it was by a cheap drone, in large numbers, month after month. And this is where the story leaves the battlefield and ends up in a gas station line. Because Ukraine understood something that the West took 4 years to understand. In 2022, the Western bet was on sanctions, and it didn't work. Russia bypassed it, found buyers in Asia, built a fleet of clandestine ships. The truth is, you can't sanction that economy from the outside, but you can burn it from the inside. And the Ukrainians named this campaign with a name that's almost a joke: long-range sanctions. Just this year, the Ukrainians have attacked Russian refineries about 194 times. In July, 18 different refineries were attacked, the record month of the entire war. And the result showed up on the bill. In July, Russia refined oil at the lowest volume in 24 years. The last time Russian refineries worked so little, Putin had just come to power. Last Sunday, only 28% of the country's gas stations had fuel to sell, and there's a recent case that shows exactly how they do this. August 11th. The Ukrainians hit a refinery in a city called Orsk in the Urals. More than 1,300 kilometers from Ukraine. Look at this footage, filmed by a resident from an elevated spot in the city. Notice where the fire is. It's not on the tanks at the edge, which is where it usually hits. It's in the middle of the complex, between the towers. That's not a coincidence. That was planned. And look at this other one. A family standing on the sidewalk. Father, mother, and child, all with their backs turned, looking at the horizon, together with the neighbors. No one running, no one screaming, just watching. They hit all 4 distillation units of the refinery in a single night. All 4 of them. The distillation unit is where the crude oil comes in and comes out, separated into gasoline, diesel, and kerosene. Without it, the rest of the refinery is useless. It's like a bakery without an oven. And it wasn't luck. That refinery had already been attacked before. In October, in November last year, and in April. Every time it came back. This time, it came back. The Ukrainians went after the part that Russia can't replace. And 2 days later, something happened that doesn't usually happen. The Russian governor does not admit defeat.
He talked about the situation being under control, about services working on site. But this one said something unusual.
In public, he said that the damaged infrastructure cannot be restored at the moment. That the equipment is imported. That, with the sanctions, the repair could take up to 6 months. And that the region is preparing to rely on imported fuel.
Did you notice what he said?
The equipment is imported. That's the whole strategy. The Ukrainians found out they could attack not the refinery, but the part that Russia bought from the West. And they haven't bought it since 2022. In 2024, Russia used to fix it in 2 weeks and move on. Now, their own governor talks about 6 months if they're able to. And the effect of this doesn't stop at the refinery. This is what happens when someone cuts off their refining. This man, he's in a gas station line in the Moscow region. He's filming because there's nothing else to do. He says he's been there since 9 o'clock Sunday morning, except for the tanker truck. And then he sums up the reality by saying there's no gasoline, and the nearest gas station is about 80 kilometers away.
The numbers, the distance, it's about 10 kilometers from here.
This one here, then, is the one that impressed me the most. It's 1:20 in the morning in Moscow, on one of the main avenues of the capital. A line stretching for blocks. The guys inside the car are laughing. They don't understand, and he asks the other, where did this line come from?
Leningrad Highway.
Now, there's something else, even more revealing, that I need to show you. On August 13th, journalists from a Russian news portal went to a line that was almost a kilometer long. They tried to interview those who were waiting, and people refused to speak on camera. According to the report, they admitted that they were afraid of consequences at work. And in June, an independent Russian outlet published that the presidential administration distributed recommendations to the press on how to report the fuel shortage. There was a separate item. It recommended publishing photos of gas stations operating without lines. Now, let's put the two things together. On one side, we have the government asking for photos of empty gas stations. On the other, the ordinary citizen who's in line, afraid of being seen. It's clear that Russia has become a country that pretends everything is fine. Now, what does a gas station line in Moscow have to do with that village from the beginning of the video?
Do you remember the word that the Ukrainian general used earlier?
Rhythm. He said they imposed their own rhythm of battle on the enemy. That's literally what's happening. Look, the army doesn't move on courage. It moves on diesel. Ammunition arrives by truck. An armored vehicle guzzles fuel. Evacuating the wounded requires logistics. When fuel becomes scarce and expensive throughout the entire country, the effect doesn't show up in the headlines. It shows up in the pace. And the pace has changed. At the beginning of 2025, the Russian army was advancing almost 10 square kilometers per Dalton. At the beginning of 2026, less than 3. Ukraine cut in half the speed of the army that was advancing on it. In April of this year, for the first time since the beginning of the invasion, Russia ended the month with less territory than it started with. And in May, the same thing happened again. And Russia paid a high price for that. Last year, Russia lost 67 men for every square kilometer it captured. This year, 179. Almost 3 times more for the same piece of ground. There are estimates that the life expectancy of an untrained Russian soldier thrown into a mass infantry assault is 20 to 30 minutes. And that number reflects the Russian tactic, which became known as the meat wave. Small groups of poorly trained people sent on foot straight against the Ukrainian position. And the cruelest part of all is that many times the objective isn't even to take the position. The objective is to make the Ukrainians fire. Because when they fire, they reveal their position, and then the Russian artillery knows where to strike. They are men used as bait. And that's what those soldiers you saw at the beginning of the video were advancing against, village by village, for 6.5 months. That's how they got to those 30 Russians who dropped their weapons. And the cost for Ukraine was heavy too. None of this came for free. The difference is that Russia stopped being able to replenish. In July, Zelensky announced that in less than 7 months of this year, 220,000 people joined the Russian armed forces, while the casualties exceeded 205,000. More people are leaving than joining. And it's good to remember the scale of this. That advance is a narrow corridor, and Russia still occupies about 1/5 of Ukraine. But after 4.5 years of pushing, it was the first time it was pushed back. As you can see, the winds have started to blow in another direction. Russian refining is at its lowest level in 24 years. Russian governors said in public that there's no fix. Right, and the Institute for the Study of War assessed that Ukraine is still making significant tactical progress at the front. In my view, all these things we've shown here in this video are connected. Ukraine is burning Russian refineries, and as a result, less diesel is reaching the front line. This leaves the Russian soldier without ammunition and without reinforcements. And that's why Russia lost the 26 villages. Now, I want to know your opinion. Do you think this campaign against the Russian economy is what will force Putin to the negotiating table? Write in the comments what you think. We follow every chapter of this story here on the channel every week with facts and sources. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out. See you in the next video.